The Bikini Killer, how Charles Sobhraj fooled the world. What if the person offering to save your vacation was actually planning your final journey? Picture yourself in Asia during the 1970s. You're young, adventurous, and thousands of miles away from home. Every day brings a new country, new friends, and unforgettable experiences. Then one afternoon, a friendly stranger approaches you. He speaks confidently, dresses well, and seems to know exactly how to help. He offers you a place to stay, shares travel advice, and treats you like an old friend. For many travelers, that chance meeting would become the last decision they ever made. His name was Charles Sobhraj. To some, he was charming. To others, he was intelligent, cultured, and generous. But behind the carefully crafted image was a man investigators would later link to a series of murders and poisonings across Asia. His ability to manipulate people earned him another nickname, the Serpent, because he seemed to slip away every time the law closed in. This is not a story about a monster hiding in the shadows. It's the story of a man who hid in plain sight, a man who understood trust so well that he could turn it into a weapon. This is the true story of Charles Sobhraj, the man the world came to know as the Bikini Killer. Charles Gurmukh Sobhraj was born on April 6, 1944, in Saigon, then part of French Indochina, now Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. His father was an Indian businessman and his mother was Vietnamese. After his parents separated, his mother later married a French army officer, and Charles eventually spent much of his childhood between Southeast Asia and France. From an early age, he struggled to fit in. He often felt like an outsider, never fully belonging in one place or another. As he grew older, he became known for his intelligence, confidence, and ability to adapt quickly to new environments. He spoke multiple languages and found it easy to gain the trust of strangers. But alongside those talents came a growing pattern of crime. As a young man in France, Sobhraj was repeatedly involved in theft, fraud, and deception. Arrests became a regular part of his life, yet prison never seemed to stop him. Instead, investigators later noted that he used those experiences to study people, observe security systems, and sharpen his ability to manipulate others. His greatest weapon was never physical strength. It was persuasion. He knew how to make people feel comfortable. He listened carefully, mirrored their personalities, and convinced them he was someone they could trust. Friends, tourists, even prison guards sometimes underestimated him because he rarely appeared threatening. By the early 1970s, a new travel route had become popular among young backpackers from Europe, Australia, and North America. Known as the Hippie Trail, it stretched through countries such as Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Nepal, and Thailand. Thousands of travelers cross these borders every year, searching for adventure, spirituality, and freedom. For Charles Sobhraj, these travelers became the perfect targets. Far from home, many carried cash instead of credit cards. They often trusted fellow backpackers more than local authorities. If someone disappeared, it could take weeks or even months before anyone realized something. At first, investigators believed they were looking at isolated incidents. Travelers disappearing in foreign countries was unusual, but not unheard of. Some people extended their trips without contacting family. Others changed their plans without notice. There was no obvious reason to suspect that a single person could be responsible. But as more reports surfaced, disturbing similarities began to emerge. Several victims had last been seen with a well-dressed man who introduced himself by different names. Sometimes he claimed to be a businessman. Other times, a gem trader. He was friendly, confident, and appeared eager to help fellow travelers. Few realized that the identity he presented was often carefully constructed. Investigators later concluded that Sobhraj frequently used stolen passports and false identities, allowing him to move across borders while making it difficult for authorities to follow his trail. Among the people who spent time with him was a woman named Marie-Andrée Leclerc, a Canadian who became his companion. Another associate, Ajay Chaudhuri, was also linked to his activities. Their exact roles have been debated over the years, but together they traveled across several countries as Sobhraj continued to evade capture. Authorities later alleged that Sobhraj targeted travelers by first gaining their confidence. In several documented cases, Victims became ill after accepting food or drinks. Investigators believe poisoning was often used to weaken or incapacitate them before robberies or other crimes took place. While not every case could be conclusively reconstructed, the pattern became increasingly difficult to dismiss. As the investigation expanded, authorities connected victims from France, the Netherlands, the United States, Canada, Australia, and several other countries. Families back home waited for letters that never arrived. Parents searched for answers. Friends hoped their loved ones had simply chosen a different path. Many would eventually learn a far more tragic truth. One of the most important breakthroughs came in Thailand. Dutch diplomats became concerned after two young Dutch backpackers, Henk Bentanja and Cornelia Hemker, disappeared during their travels. Their burned bodies were later identified, and investigators began examining everyone who had been in contact with them. That investigation led to an extraordinary discovery. Working in Bangkok, Dutch diplomat Herman Knippenberg refused to accept that these deaths were random. Patiently gathering documents, interviewing witnesses, and comparing evidence across borders, he began connecting cases that authorities had previously treated as unrelated. Piece by piece, a pattern emerged. Different countries, different victims, the same suspect. Knippenberg's determination transformed the investigation. He collected passport records, photographs, witness statements, and travel information that slowly revealed the movements of Charles Sobhraj and his associates across Asia. It was painstaking work at a time when international databases and instant communication did not exist. As the evidence grew, so did the scale of the case. Authorities realized they were not simply searching for a fraudster or a thief. They were pursuing a man suspected of multiple murders committed across international borders, using deception instead of violence to approach his victims. Yet despite growing suspicion, Charles Sobhraj continued to stay one step ahead. He crossed borders with remarkable ease. He changed names. He altered appearances. He carried stolen passports belonging to previous victims, making it incredibly difficult for immigration officials and police to identify him. Again and again, opportunities to arrest him slipped away. By 1976, investigators had finally closed in on Charles Sobhraj. For years, he had stayed one step ahead of authorities. He had crossed borders, changed identities, and vanished whenever the law came close. But in New Delhi, India, his luck began to run out. According to investigators, Sobhraj approached a group of French students and offered them pills, claiming they were medicine. Soon after, several of the students became violently ill. Unlike many before them, they realized something was terribly wrong and alerted the police. For the first time in years, Charles Sobhraj couldn't disappear. He was arrested. Across Asia, investigators finally had the man they had been chasing for years. But even prison couldn't stop him. In 1986, while serving his sentence in India, Sobhraj carried out one of the most unbelievable prison escapes in modern criminal history. Investigators said he gained the trust of prison guards, offered them sweets laced with sedatives, and walked out of prison while they lay unconscious. It sounded impossible, yet it happened. For 22 days, the man known as the Serpent was free once again. Then in Goa, Indian authorities captured him. Ironically, what appeared to be another successful escape may have worked against him. Many investigators believe it delayed his extradition and kept him imprisoned in India for longer. Years later, after completing his sentence, Sobhraj returned to France. Many believed his story had finally come to an end. They were wrong. In 2003, he traveled to Nepal, where authorities recognized him inside a casino in Kathmandu. This time, there was nowhere left to run. He was arrested once again. In 2004, a Nepali court convicted Charles Sobhraj in connection with the murders of two backpackers and sentenced him to life imprisonment. The man who had spent decades escaping investigators had finally reached the end of the road. In December 2022, after nearly 20 years in a Nepali prison, he was released on humanitarian grounds because of his age and health and was deported to France. But for the families of the victims, the story never truly ended. Some journeys never reached home. Some questions were answered too late, and some scars never faded. Some stories fade into history, Others become warnings. And this is one of them, because every shadow hides a story, and every story leaves a mark. This is Shadow Tales.